evening. My name is Anthony Calamut. I'm professor and program coordinator of the Creative Advertising program at Seneca College. And welcome to AdTLC, an evening conversation about thinking, learning, and connecting. This is the first of 3 weeks that we are going to be running this series. And tonight I'm welcoming two guests, award-winning group creative directors from Leo Burnett, Toronto. Steve Persico, a Seneca College alumni, copywriter, and Anthony Chelcanathan Art Director. Good evening, gentlemen. Steve, let's talk about your ride into the business. I mean, it's one of the first questions that I'm sure would want to get asked. How did you get into the business? What drove you into the business?
I think it goes back to starting back at school. I was studying, I was in university at York studying communications and sociology. And you know, it was good and everything, but I overheard someone talking about an advertising program here at Seneca, which of course you were running. And it sort of just started to hear about the things that you would do, the hands-on things and sort of creating things. I thought it was interesting, and I went home and read about it and signed up for it. And a year later, sort of ended up in I think it was the first day of class in your class, and you started handing around an advertising annual. I think it was either a one show or communication arts. I remember seeing it going around the room, and some people would look through it and look at every page and every ad, and some people would sort of flip through it quickly and pass it on. And I remember when it came to me, I finally, you know, it was the first time I'd ever really been exposed to advertising as a super creative medium. I never really thought about it in that way, because a lot of the stuff you saw on television or newspaper wasn't the most creative stuff. And I started to look through this annual, and it's just image after image of, you know, beautiful copy and art direction and playful things. And just never saw advertising like that. And I think that was the moment where I fell in love with it. And then, you know, after going through school, working on your book, and you know, students always, you know, ask me, what did my book look like? And the truth is, it never looked the same from one day to the next. It was always changing. There's always ads going in, ads coming out, little changes here and there. And once I had my book after graduating, sort of, I must have seen every creative director in the city and almost every shop, and just trying to get a job somewhere, internship somewhere. And went to a portfolio review night. Met with, at that time, a creative director at Leo Burnett, Israel Diaz. Saw my book, he liked it. Met with Artie Shaw, another creative director at Leo Burnett at the time. Both of them brought me in. And that's sort of how I got into the business.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anthony, how was your ride into this business? How did you get here?
In high school, I loved art, and so I was taking art courses. And the teacher, Miss Wood, she actually told me to, you know, we had life drawing classes where we had to draw stuff around the house. And one of the things that I drew was like a perfume bottle. She just happened to see that, and she goes, "You need to go into graphic design." I had no clue what graphic design was. So I took graphic design / advertising in George Brown, and I remember taking graphic design, and I felt like it was making things look pretty. So we had a little test, a half a year of advertising, and I like the fact that you can think, and it has more soul to it. And one of the ads that I did, apparently, you know, just I appreciated more. So I started to go more into advertising, and that's how I landed.
Did the program have sort of a stream towards advertising, or was it straight graphic design?
It was. I would say they're very major in graphic design, but you had like a year and a half just to try it out. It's not like a hardcore advertising school,
right?
But maybe now it is. But 10 years ago, it wasn't. But yeah, after I tried that, I wanted to go into advertising. And it's funny, Steve said Artie Shaw, and Artie Shaw is the same guy who got me into Leo Burnett as well.
Now, did you do the portfolio review night process, or were you just shopping your book around?
I was just shopping my book around. I actually did a promo piece, and on my promo piece, my name was on it. And actually, that's one of the reasons how I got the shop, because I have a long last name.
Right.
Because it caught, Artie was telling me while he was walking on the reception, he just saw a long name, and that got him curious. He looked at it, and he called me for an interview, and after that, Judy saw it, and then I got in.
So if you buy sports teams jerseys, they charge you extra.
Yeah, exactly.
Finally it paid off.
Finally, my name.
Well, I want to get into that, the conversation like about school. And we have all the portfolio schools that are, you know, the Miami Ad schools, the VCUs, the Senecas, the Humbers, who are now starting to specialize. Because I mean, when I got into the biz, the only job that you actually went to school for, and that's a long time ago, we used chisels and mallets, was the art director, because you went to art school or you studied graphic design. So like your graphic design background, you know, like you hear art direction is a craft, and I know that you appreciate that craft. So can both of you talk to the writing craft, the art direction craft, and how did you take your graphic design and make yourself a better art director? Or, you know, the essentials of being a great art director is also to know great design, copywriting, wordsmithing, et cetera. So talk about preparing yourself while you're studying or what you should be studying.
As far as when I was in school, or just
Overall, like even as you're looking at books today.
I mean, writing is a craft, and you know, but I think to think of it as art is something interesting, but to think of it, it really is hard work. It really is, you know, pages and pages and pages. I tell every student that comes in to show me their book, it's like, to get one headline, I have to write 30, and only one of those. I mean, that rate is horrible. No other job in the world can you know, 1 out of 100, you know, things
1%.
you do is okay, and that's the way it is. I show, you know, creative directors, you know, tons of lines just to get one that's, you know, that's all right, and then you go back and you sort of play with it a bit. And so to me, to call it a craft or like an art is feels nice, but I think at the end of the day, it's more like it's a job. It's a hard thing. It really is. But you enjoy it when you finally get all the words right and all that. I think it feels good. And I always tell my sort of theory of anytime I write something is, you know, it has to say something. It has to have something interesting about it and say that in an interesting way. So it's, you know, it has to have meaning, but it also has to have a little bit of, you know, a little something to it that makes it interesting to read. So that's sort of always my way of looking at sort of headlines.
An attention grabber or something that will create an engagement.
But I think it has to have meaning into it. Sometimes I see headlines that are kind of interesting, but they're not really saying anything. Mm-hmm. And I think it really needs to say something that people can connect with, but then say it in an interesting way that either makes them, you know, connect with it or remember it. And so that's my theory.
So design in, you know, again, I studied as a graphic designer first and then became an art director when I broke into the business, and, you know, that's how we got in. That was our job. But now art directors and design, you know, they seem to have pulled apart, or people are coming in from some very different places. So talk to graphic design and art direction as crafts as well as, you know, entry points.
Yeah, I remember taking graphic design, and it actually helped my career. I felt like I had a little bit more advantage than some of the art directors down there, because they always said it's always good to know the tools and basic fundamentals. But at the end of the day, I've always said, you know, I'm art director, but I don't want to be known as the guy who just makes things look pretty. I almost don't want to even touch the art direction tool to the last minute. Like, really want to brainstorm and think of ideas is something that I've always pushed to. And I find art direction the fun part. Like, you know, you can put your headsets on, listen to it, do it at, you know, after the 12th hour. But yeah, definitely graphic design helps big time, just to know the basic fundamentals of just layouts and types and just the feeling of, you know, each ad to the other shouldn't be all the same and stuff like that. So it's good to know the basics, and it's a big advantage. So my recommend is like even taking like a course of just typography, just colors, and just all that thing is a big advantage as an art director.
Yeah, especially, you know, type, which is, you know, something I'm very hot for. Is I love great typography. Yeah. And, you know, that as a skill itself, you know, like you almost look at some ads, and the ones I love the most are the ones that drag me in with some great type, you know, the visual sort of thing. Well, speaking of work, I also want to get to your process and how you get to your ideas. How do you attack a brief? You know, we're going to look at James Ready, which you guys have won several awards for. Leo Burnett has done very well. You guys have driven this client for quite a while now. We're going to be looking at the CAP recall case study. And so once we finish with that, I'd love to talk about the brief, how you approach that brief, what is your process, and we'll go from there. So let's cue that up, please. Thank you.
For years, every James Ready beer came with a message under its cap. These James Ready caps have become part of the brand and something our drinkers look forward to every time they have a beer. But on June 2nd, 2010, the caps went blank. It was a screw up, big time. Within days of our drinkers finding blank caps on their beers, we started getting emails, letters, and videos from confused drinkers. We saw this as an opportunity and launched the James Ready Blank Cap Recall. We posted this recall video on our Facebook page.
It has come to my attention that some JR beers left the brewery with nothing written under the caps, and that made some JR drinkers sad. To make it up to you, we are recalling all blank caps. Recalling all blank caps. Send us the blank caps you find and we'll send you something in return. What you get depends on how many caps you return.
We also placed a handwritten recall letter from the brewery in every case of beer. Soon, blank caps started getting mailed in. Over 1 million blank caps kept drinkers searching and the guys at the brewery busy. And, as promised, the brewery compensated people for their blank caps with something. Each item we sent came with a personalized note. The James Ready Blank Cap Recall was an example of a beer company quickly reacting to consumer concerns. In the end, James Ready turned a negative into a positive, turned confused drinkers into happy drinkers, and turned a handful of blank beer caps into a ninja hamster or an Asian ball thing.
So doing something really unique like the cap recall, what was in the brief? What was the challenge that you guys brought forward, and let us be the fly in the wall at the client briefing when you came up with this idea?
Well, this was, how do I say, this was very accidental. It wasn't like planned brief or anything like that. I remember one day we were just sitting around in the hallway, and it was actually Judy, Steve, and I, and the account people just came by, and it was kind of like, you know what, they actually effed up on the caps, and we need a Facebook update, just apologizing to it.
The story in the case is 100% true, in that we always have things under caps, and then for some reason, a screw up in the printing, and a bunch of caps went out blank, and people started sending the brewery emails and phone calls. Why are they blank? What does this mean? And so it's a true story, and
right.
And so it's kind of it's interesting. It's one of those sort of accidental projects that come along that was turned into a great opportunity.
And we took that as an opportunity. We're
Absolutely.
like, oh my God, like not just a Facebook post we want to do something more. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I remember Toyota had a recall as well. So it was
Their gas pedals were sticking.
Right. It was just like all was like coming together, and it was something like a tiny opportunity, but we saw something big in there.
So a big idea came out of an accident, which is which is amazing, because one of the things that we, as you're learning about advertising and developing skills, we talk about proactive campaigns, ones that are well planned out, strategically sound, budgeted forever, and then the reactive campaign when, well, the shit hits the fan. Yeah. But in this case, really, how big was that dump, right? Not that big, but you capitalized on the moment, which, it's an amazing piece. Yeah. So just lounging around and the account folks, but how did the client react to your thoughts and your ideas that you presented? Or do they trust you that much that whatever you guys say goes?
No, I think they loved the thought. I mean, again, it was one of those things, we need an email or we need a Facebook post to explain this. And when we went back with
the deck,
so much more that we can do.
Right.
They're great clients, and they know that it was a great idea and it didn't really cost anything. So yeah, let's go for it. Yeah. And in the end, I think, all the stuff you see in that video is 100%, like just the boxes and boxes of stuff that people sent us, and the caps and blank caps and blank, it was just unbelievable.
We had no clue. Like,
we really didn't think people were going to do this.
Yeah, grown men would write letters. it was like
write us letters, collect their caps, and mail them into us. It was unbelievable.
The first week that when the client came in, they just started dumping on the table, and it was like a mountain of letters. We didn't know that the caps meant this much to the target. Wow. We knew they were really passionate fans, but we had no clue. It was just a big deal for them.
So in many ways, that then gives inspiration to you coming up with the spelling bee,
right,
which was another uber successful James Ready piece. So so now all of a sudden the cap is the DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the many DNAs, but that's certainly one of them.
And it's great. It's sort of proof that you don't, the brand is, we've always been challenged with, we don't have huge budgets. And so doing stuff with packaging has always been our opportunity with that brand. And we're always trying to use the caps as much as we can to do interesting things.
And do you guys take, seriously, with that kind of an engagement with your audience, that much love being shown, they don't even write their mothers, but they're ready to write a brewery, right? With that much love, has your audience come to you with ideas saying, why don't you guys maybe run an idea like this, maybe?
Get that every day on the Facebook page. Every day you get something.
Yeah.
You get
You get
photos and you
jingles.
get jingles. You get songs. You get names of new products. You get everything, and it's great. It's actually it's fun.
Right.
It doesn't feel like advertising. It's sort of beyond that. It's really fun.
Well, and that's, again, that's one of the Twitter questions that we have prepared. We did some questions in advance, and it's like now today is this like, what is advertising anymore? Like, what is advertising anymore? Like,
No clue.
No clue.
It's very, it's very. I guess the good advertisings are the ones doesn't feel like advertising.
right.
It's very natural. It's not like, here, buy this, and one of the things that we like about that James Reddy is there's always been the two-way cycle.
Right.
It's always, we're helping you, you help us, and everything that we did, we always involved the people,
Right.
and I think that's one of the reason why it doesn't feel like an advertising.
One thing we have at Leo Burnett is called humankind,
Right.
which is this idea of that we're moving away from, like Anthony said, it's not about selling things, it's not about being an advertisement, it's about being humankind, which is sort of going out there trying to help people, whether it's entertaining them or helping them through problems or directing them in the right direction, whatever it is. Being humankind is having a face to your brand and a personality that people can connect it with. And it's much more than, I think, it's hard to define now for sure, because
Right.
it's beyond being able to say, oh, it's a TV ad or it's a print ad. It is those things, but there's much more to it now.
And one of the real big definers of that sort of, that doesn't feel like you're being advertised to is the Droga 5 Bing Jay-Z launch, right?
Yep.
Right.
What an incredible case study. Everybody go onto YouTube and take a look at the Bing Jay-Z launch, and again, a nice piece that, what is advertising anymore, because nothing in there felt like advertising whatsoever. I guess I'd like to talk about something called transferable skills in life. I'm a huge believer that we have so many things in our lives that we can transfer. Like all of a sudden tonight I'm a talk show host, and and by day I'm a professor, and then God knows dad at some time. But these learned disciplines that you've got throughout life, how important are they today for the young creative or for the person that's entering the ad business to begin to showcase and bring transferable skills to the forefront? How important is that in the search? What have you brought from your lives into that when you were breaking in?
The simple answer is everything. Especially, and I would say a lot of jobs and careers you have to bring transferable skills. But in advertising, it's like every day is, you sit around and it's something you learn in school, but you sit around and when you're brainstorming, it's, well, you know what I saw today? I saw this guy do this, and isn't that interesting? Or, a movie I saw? Yeah, that's interesting technique. Or, you know what I read? Or, you know what I remember hearing someone say? Or, do you know what and it's everything in life sort of just, seems to somehow come through in advertising, and those things. And it's also the hard work skills that you might learn from going to school and balancing a job at the same time. It's all those skills, and, maybe it's at the time in university when I was writing these long essays and taking the ability to write a lot and then go back and edit or research. All those skills come into everything we do. One of the hardest for me to learn was presentation skills. I think that's one thing. It's hard. It's almost impossible to teach, because you just got to sort of be thrown into the fire and go for it, and you'll develop your style. So that's one thing. I always try to pull stuff from, but you just don't have those everyday experiences where you're sitting in front of a room of 15 people and they're going, okay, so how are you going to spend our $5 million? And you're like, this is my third day in the business. So it's one of those. That was for me the hardest thing to sort of start to grasp, and just really, there was no sort of life experiences that I could pull from in that situation.
I think one of the king of advertising is insightful ideas.
Right.
And every day, you know, when we're sitting around, as Steve was saying, like cheer dark, Steve said, you know, black makes you look skinny. Like that's like all these insights you learn as you're a kid and stuff like that. And every day, like we're lucky because you could be in the coffee shop, like, you know, observing something, some little insights there. And it's all about being real and bringing the true. But if you can apply that realness into advertising, then that way you would connect with a lot of people. And
let's take a look at, we do have those cheer ads that we can pop up on screen. So since you brought them up, let's talk about them. I think they're going to get queued up in a second, and hopefully we can take a look. I guess there we go.
So, like Anthony was saying, we had this brief about this detergent that's for black clothes, and you sit around and you start to throw out all these things and so on and so forth. And like he had said, something that always stuck in my brain was a guy I knew who was a bigger guy, and someone asked him, why do you always wear black? And jokingly he said, because it makes me look skinny. And that was maybe 5, 6 years earlier. And then 6 years later, here we are sitting in an office, and it becomes useful and becomes something that's always stuck in my head. And from there, we sort of brainstormed this idea. And Stickman sketched it down. A stickman with big head and big arm or big hands, and we showed it around the office, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's wonderful." And
so the big insight on again another throwaway line that somebody. Well, I guess I was trying to be skinny tonight. I did my Johnny Cash to try and.
The camera adds 10 pounds.
No, I asked them to put the special skinny filter on my picture, and that way we all look the same. Great. What conditions, I mean, the presentation thing for sure is, one of the conditions that really guarantees success. If you can sell and you can present, it's, like that's magic. We pride ourselves now within the program with experiential learning. We go to agency partners that are with the program. We've worked with Leo on things with TVO, Kellogg's, we just did recent pitches with Leo on that. And the students have to pitch to the agency team. So present there was planners, account people, some creatives. And that's what these experiences are supposed to bring. The other part is to guarantee sort of success. That's the wrong thing. There's no guaranteed success. But what other real skills that you would think are essential? Presentation being, I agree with you 100%. If you can sell, you can present your ideas, it's gold. But the other pieces, like what other pieces do you highly recommend that people start polishing and working on?
Your individual craft, I think, whether it's writing or art direction or design or management, whatever it is, that's an obvious one. I think, I don't know if you can craft this, but I think hard work is a skill. I think it's something you have to work at and learn how to get a lot done in a little time sometimes, You might think you work hard because you work a lot of hours, but you're not necessarily working hard or working smart. So I think it's, time management is super important. Your attitude and your personality, I think, seems weird to think of that as a skill, but sometimes it is. You're in an office and you need to know how to deal with people and deal with situations.
Likability.
Pardon me?
Likability.
I mean, to quote Lisa Greenberg once, she said, "Don't be a douchebag." I think that's the simplest way to put it. It makes life easier for everyone, and nobody wants to work with a douchebag, right. No matter how good you are.
And I think also another thing that creative directors have is the gut feeling and that is something that you have to build from just watching and learning good work. I mean, going to Cannes or looking at one shows or whatever, you just have a feeling of type of ads. So whenever you have an idea or direction, you already know instantly which way or what's the emotions that has to come out of that ad. And that takes a lot of, building it up. Right. But the way I think Steve and I do it is we always look at annuals. We're always refreshing ourselves with other content, even just like going to museums, like looking at typography or whatever, but it's having that gut, like just to be knowing the direction. Yeah, it's instinct, I guess.
So being a good observer is important.
Yeah.
Always.
One of the things that, the culture vulture of being able to watch everything that's going around you, even today is even more relevant because of how fast things change. So again, the idea of that those are, softer skills that a creative director will look for in a person. One of the things we've done these, like we go to New York for Ad Week in the fall, and so we've done these with George Lois, Alex Bogusky, and one of the things is passion. Every time they say, look, I'm looking for passion, but how do you measure passion? And so how do you, when you see somebody, is there something, a switch you can look for to see if this person is as passionate as they're selling themselves as, or can you see it in their work? What are the things that you look for there?
I think you can see passion through their work, because I think what is one of the insights is, for me especially, if I can tell that person, because it kind of resembles what I went through in their position. So if you can tell them that they're taking their time to craft their photo, or no pixelation, not being lazy, pushing it, and those little details are the ones that you can separate it from somebody who's passionate and somebody who's just is up there. So I think those little fine details is what you can see. And you also put yourself in their position, saying, oh man, I remember doing that, and that person has the same passion. Right. And that way you can tell.
Sorry, just on that note, I always ask students what in their book is a school project and what is something you've been working on the side. And to me, that speaks to passion again, because like Anthony, I remember when I was in school, a lot of stuff that was in my book wasn't from a school project, because I knew there'd be tons of people with the same brand and same product. So I was always trying to work on stuff on the side and work on that. So to me, that again speaks to this idea of passion. You can see it in their book. You truly can see it in their book. If you don't even meet the person, you can see it in how neatly everything's trimmed and cut, and the type, and it's not pixelated, and there's no, you can see it. You can see it in the work. And
also if they come back to you with your feedback, and that's just icing on the cake.
Let me ask a question then about that, because that's always one of the things that I, in any of the classes that I do with career and portfolio development, is to sort of like say, look, somebody's willing to give you some advice. I mean, I always hate the one piece of advice, you can push this further. Yeah. And I'm like going, well, what the hell do you want me to push? The type, the visual, what is it? So I always say, look, ask them what they mean by that push. Yeah. And some of them don't have the balls to do that. Yeah. But when you say, send me the stuff after this, what's the percentage of them that actually send it back to you? What's your experience been as far as that's concerned?
Well, you can tell by the people that you're meeting, the ones that really want it. You can tell by their book. They're very crafty. They're willing to work hard. I guess one of the techniques, the way I like to give feedbacks, is to actually show them student work.
Okay.
I keep the best student work, and I show them, this is what I'm talking about. See the presentation, see how they framed it up, see the ideas, see the treatment. And I would even say, look, these are copywriters' book, and their book is much more presentable, and you're an art director. So just showing their own competition and just visually seeing. I remember I was in school, and all these guys would come and show their book, but they had like 30 years experience. So I had no connections. Right. Like I'm like, I can't compete with those guys. They're like,
I can't get those photographers, or I can't record my radio spot ideas, or I can't. But here's a student who did do it, who went out and shot what they needed for that ad. They didn't just go online, find an image that's not quite right. They went out and they shot it, and I think.
Because for an art director, I mean, it's kind of easy for us to see the passion in the work, like those details of that, the way pixelation or how they Photoshop something, or those extra pieces. And that's where I was going to throw it over to you, Steve, is to say, but how would you be able to see that in a writer's book? Because again, that frustration that a couple of my students have come back saying that, did my book not get a good review because the art direction sucked? Well, I'm a writer. Right. My art direction sucks. I'm not an art director. So what do you do to kind of advise a writer to balance there?
I try not to separate so much. I mean, I always ask whether you're a writer or art director, but to me it doesn't necessarily really matter. I want to know that if you're an art director, you know what a good idea and good writing is. And if you're a writer, I want you to know that it's important to have great art direction, because that makes the idea 100 times better. So I always, anytime someone comes up with that, I say, well, go find an art director to work with.
Right.
Not only, will your stuff look better will the idea come out, but you'll brainstorm together, you'll push each other, you'll disagree on stuff, you'll agree on other stuff, and the work will be not 2 times better, but 20 times better.
The magic of social media marrying. Some of our students have done, Twitter looking for an art director in Toronto
Yeah,
area.
it's easier
Even
now than ever.
Craigslist, right?
Yeah.
easier
willing
now
to
than
work
ever.
on books. So yeah, it's easier than ever. So yeah, good advice for copywriters specifically, like get an art director in your life.
It always makes the book better.
Yeah.
No matter, what I mean? It's a win-win situation for art director as well as writer.
Right.
I always find it like execution is half the battle. You have a great idea, but how you execute it to push it to the next level. So as a writer, I've seen better books, art director from a writer working with their art director than just art director itself. So it's like it comes down to passion.
Yeah.
How much you're willing to push. Are you going to go and find an art director who's going to help you out? Are you going to try to push your book? So again, it comes down to passion.
Yeah, one of the, as I was mentioning, we've chatted with some, when we go for New York and Ad Week, we get to see some pretty senior people, and that was one of the things, passion, we can't measure it, but that's one of the things, like, Bogusky said it, Lois said it, Scott Goodson, Strawberry Frog, they want passion.
Yeah.
Because really after that, if I hire a passionate person, I can give you skills. I can help work your skills out, but I can't teach passion, I can't make you passionate. You got to bring that to the table. So I was really glad that we got a chance to talk about that. Matt Lee, Mr. Twitter feed. We have a Twitter feed going, which if you put on the hashtag AdTLC, AdTLC, you can send us in any of your questions. We'll try and get to some of them towards the bottom of the hour. And Matt, what have we got? Anything there?
Yeah, we got a lot of questions that you guys have actually covered just now with sort of how do you stand out in the industry, and what are your techniques for coming up with big ideas and concepts. But really interesting one here. In the future of brand development, it is important to have a strong focus on the brand's social makeup. Social media is largely based on the written word. What do you see as major challenges for copywriters in the coming year?
And they got that in 140 characters?
No.
Was that two-parter?
That was two-parter.
So basically, brand, social, the connections in the future.
It's a huge part of what we do every day. It's, whether it's literally on the social, the media, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, it seems to be every project we have, there needs to be some sort of link to those things. And every idea needs to go social. As budgets get smaller, if it's a TV spot, somehow they want it to go social. I mean, you saw what Old Spice doing such a great creative TV spot has brought them so much, attention socially. And I think everything we do, whether it's a print ad, out-of-home ad, or specifically online or social media, it needs to have some sort of social component to it. But to be honest, whether we're working on something like that or as something as simple as a old school out-of-home ad, the oldest form of advertising, it doesn't change. It still is. It needs an idea, or we feel is never going to connect with people and doesn't it'll never resonate, and it won't matter anyway. So the skills are sometimes online it needs to be a bit shorter. Twitter's obviously certain word counts. Facebook has things as well, but overall, it's at the end of the day, is there a great idea that is going to connect with people?
Yeah, really don't worry about where it's going to live. Is it a big idea? Because if it's a great idea,
Yeah.
it could live anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That sort of thing. Matt, anything else we have there?
Graduate and start your own shop versus get hired, ?
Oh, that's for me. That's easy. I think if you think you know everything coming out of school and you can start your own shop and you'll know what to do, you don't. I mean, even after 8 years in the business, every day I have no clue.
No clue, exactly.
No clue about, it's just there's just so much to learn.
Yeah,
There's just so much to learn.
Yeah, everything has to come together. It's not just like opening up a shop. How do you, there's a whole
The
vast of
whole
things.
team of people that you need to assist you. You can't do everything by yourself.
Yeah.
But
we're seeing that there's an entrepreneurial spirit that's living. I mean, I got to now try and remember where I saw it yesterday, but somebody, there was something posted someplace in my social life that talked about a job versus being an entrepreneur. I'm not interested in an internship. I'm interested in entrepreneurship today, because the new economy it's a little tougher. You guys are working with fewer people. You're working with smaller budgets. You've got every client walking in and saying, I want an Old Spice guy. Or they're walking in and saying, yeah, there's this bought media, but how much earned media can you get me? So that's the worry for some of these grads, and I think that's the basis of that question, is to sort of like say, do I go out and try and do something because the new economy says there's less jobs out there, but there's really jobs for talent, right?
There's always
Yes.
jobs for talent. I think that's people always ask, are you looking? And then the answer is, if you're good, they'll always be looking for you. So, yeah, I mean, there's always jobs for talented people.
I think, yeah, if you have a killer book, they'll make room. They'll
Right.
somehow get you in there. I remember, I think what was the ADCC review that we went last week? The girl that I just saw, 5 people throwing the business card right at her. Here, can you come talk to us? Can you come talk to us? Because it was just talent. I mean,
Right.
you hear things like, oh, nobody's hiring, whatever, but your book's up there. You have passion. You make your book amazing. Like, people will come to you.
And that's the whole idea of your own personal, how you view yourself. You got to have the positivity.
Yeah.
I mean, you've always forever got to have a positive attitude that says, yeah, I may be hearing this, I don't want to listen to it, because if you want it, I mean, I have a personal mantra, which I guess, there's one of the questions I wanted to get to at some point was, my personal mantra is 10 words, 2 letters each. If it is to be, it is up to me. So,
Right.
I direct my future. Do you guys have personal mantras, things that you kind of live by? That keep you positive and focused, or am I just a crazy old
I
man
mean, I've
who?
said I've always been, yeah, I mean, I've always been motivated or directed by jealousy. And what I mean by that is, if I see someone do something better, it really gets me, and I think, why can't I do that? Whether it's advertising or sports or whatever it is, and I've always sort of had this healthy I think it's healthy anyway, jealousy of people who do better than me, and not wanting, I'm still happy for them, and it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing at all, but it does motivate me to want to do better, and I think it's always been that way, and I think
Right.
as a student I was that way too. I would see other student books and go, shit, their book's way better than mine,
Right.
and I would go home that night and work around the clock to make sure my book was better, and that's how I got to where I am now, is because I don't like being second.
Right.
It's
Yeah, Ricky Bobby, right? If you're not first, you're
Ricky.
last, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of thing. I'd love to take a look at another piece of your amazing award-winning work for Raise the Roof. And so we're going to take a look at that clip now, and then we'll come back and talk to, again, your process and how you ended up with this, and maybe talk about the success you've had with the award shows. So if we could roll the clip on Raise the Roof.
There are 200,000 homeless people in Canada. Despite this large number, the general public ignores the issue because they assume all homeless people choose to live on the street. They're lazy, troublemakers, or drug addicts. Working with Raising the Roof, a homeless awareness organization, we set out to educate people and make the invisible visible. To do this, we saw an opportunity in the Doors Open Festival, a weekend when the public gets to tour beautiful spaces in Toronto, which are normally off limits. During the festival, we invited the public to tour our space, the Street House. We built the Street House entirely out of cardboard in a city alleyway. The purpose was to get people to stop, think, and understand the real issues behind why some people end up on the street. Inside the Street House were numerous rooms. Some rooms address the misconceptions about the homeless. Other rooms put people in the shoes of the homeless, forcing them to think how they would make money for dinner, or find a place to sleep that night. Every time someone turned a corner in the unsettling house, they faced something new. Like hard-hitting facts about life on the street, or heartfelt messages from actual homeless people begging to be seen as human. After presenting the problem in a way people have never experienced before, we then used the last room to create hope. People could read positive stories, learn about the organization, donate, or help spread the word. For 2 days, the Street House made the homeless issue impossible to ignore. And one person at a time changed the way the city saw the homeless.
very personal.
We should be made to think about it more, and I think that's good.
It's important. I mean, a lot of people have a misconception of what these individuals have to go through.
It makes me think about some of the people that we just actually, walk by.
The Street House, a tour of homelessness.
With the amount of creative in that, I mean, where did that come from? What motivated, inspired you on this one? I mean, it's genius.
I mean, we've been working with Raising the Roof for about 3 years now, and since day one, I think the client, who are great people, and us sort of sat around a table and we said, if we're going to do things, we need to do things differently because nothing seems to be working quite as well as it should be. So, I mean, that was, we wanted to do something in the summer that would grab attention, and we always talk about, every day, downtown, people walk by homeless people, literally sometimes stepping over them. They could be shoeless and hungry and, almost dead, and people just walk by and don't pay attention. And we keep saying to ourselves, how are we going to do an ad, a billboard, or whatever that's going to make people stop if they don't even stop for these human beings? And so we had this, from there. So we started from there. That sort of thought. It's always stuck with us, and we started to think about what could we do literally to make people stop and engage with this cause, and then sort of throwing the ideas around this idea of, what if we built some sort of exhibit, something that people experience, pulled people, and with the help of, a lot of great production people and great directors and stuff like that, we sort of came up with this idea of the Street House, and it all came together somehow, and a lot of hard work from so many people at Leo and people outside of Leo, but it sort of stemmed from that want to, need to do something different and make people stop.
How much earned media did you get out of it? How was the first reaction the first couple of days? Was it what you expected, or was it way over?
It's kind of the reactions of people going through, I thought I never felt so great about something I've done in my life. There's sort of this house that you walk through, and I sat in the back of the house near the end of the second day, and the stuff people were saying, and their stories, and so on and so forth, and I never thought it would touch people that much, but it did. So I mean, it was probably it is the thing that I'm most proud of, because you literally saw it come to life. Not only was it unique and creative, we built a house out of cardboard. You don't learn that in school.
Yeah, right.
But just seeing the reactions from people that you think you wouldn't give two craps about.
Right. So the personal satisfaction was enormous for you, for both of you, obviously.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, this is a great example of a teamwork. Originally, this idea was doing it for a condo, but then there's this thing every year that you can actually go to open house, and that was one of the directors' thought was just let's do it during that time, and it just made it a lot more stronger because, during that time you can go visit all these other places, but one thing we're forgetting is the one that people live in. And as Steve was saying, like, just seeing people walk by, everybody that walked by just stopped or walked fast because they don't know how to react. Right. And just see like people crying in the thing. They're all connected, and each room had a different message for different people. Like so yeah, it was again what Steve's saying. It was one of the most proudest thing that we did.
And the industry, how did they react to that? Like, what was their buzz? The story that you were hearing, like other agencies going, "Holy crap!" Like, because that's again, there's a question coming up that talks about loving work, but
I think that the press was pretty good. I mean, there was you'd see ad people who, because it was in the downtown core, and there's a lot of agencies around, so you'd see ad people coming in and walking through, and after sort of giving you a look like, "Oh shit, well, it's great." So yeah, I think it's been perceived quite well. I think it's
people give praise to it, but yeah, it was all positive.
Excellent. You mentioned like it's stuff that you don't see while you're doing in school, or stuff that you don't do in school. Are you seeing some of the students' books today trying to do more of this type of work, stuff that what do we call it? You know, ambient, do we call it borrowed media? You know, this type of ideas. How should that be shown to you? What would you expect to see if somebody came with that in their book? How would you like to see that presented? Or
just like award shows, doing press boards, just having the idea first and foremost, but be able to present in a way that it takes me through the story.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing not good is the way they present the idea.
Right.
I mean, it took us a lot of training to get to there, but it's one of the things like, you know, you need to write that line that sums up the whole idea, and then that simple paragraph, and then that key visual that, again, you get it right away, and then these little insets. So it's all about how you present your work, and
Right.
and yeah, I do see some things like that, and it's nice that people are not thinking in the advertising way, but more very like human and natural way for the problem.
I should have mentioned, you brought up humankind, one of the Leo Burnett mantras. I really advise any student to go out and buy the book. It is available on Amazon and at Chapters. It's a great read. It really gives you a sense of, you know, like each of the books, like Love Marks from the Saatchis and, you know, et cetera. So, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. We have it in our library for that reason, and that human instinct thing. So the student books that do, you know, come with that, the idea of a student book that has the whole 360 of a campaign, that at one of the review nights, one of the reviewers was mentioning to a student that they would rather see one, you know, show me one campaign that gives me everything than giving me like 7 different campaigns that, you know, just give me a touch of. What are your thoughts on that idea, like to be able to see somebody take you through the entire story of what is expected from a real full campaign?
I think it's something you always said when I was in school is you see 1,000 people, you'll get 1,000 different opinions.
Right.
And so I'll just give my opinion. And I sort of agree with that. I as much as I love, you know, all these different sort of media and one-offs, you know, it's a great app, it's a great website or this or that. I sort of still want to see, you know, a beautiful, well-written, well-art directed print ad or out-of-home ad that sort of all works together, a beautiful campaign that sort of moves from one media to a different media to online, maybe there's an event. I sort of want to see everything work together, and to me that's sort of the strength of an idea. And mixed in there, if there's, you know, one-off great web banner or one-off great out-of-home ad, that's great too. That's, you know, it's fun. But for me, it's always the strength of an idea is in the fact that it goes from a DM piece all the way to this, you know, this act on the street. So for me, I want to see it all, and then, you know, like you said, you'll see a different creative director or somebody else, and they'll say, you know, I just want to see print ads, or I don't want to see any print ads. And I think that's the tough thing, a frustrating thing as a student. But at the end of the day, which raises 2 points. One is to go to the agencies that do the work that you like to do. Yeah. It's very important, because if you love to do experimental stuff that's, you know, beautifully designed and stuff like that, go to agencies that do that. Because if you go to an agency that's interested in doing traditional stuff, then you're not going to fit in there. And the second point was, I forgot what it was. But it was, but anyway, that first point I think is very key for students to know.
Finding where you want to work.
Yeah, finding where you work, and don't just, because I did it as a student, was my biggest mistake, was I applied to any place that was in the yellow pages under advertising. I went there, and I don't even know the names of those places now, and nothing against them, but if I went there, I would have never, you know, worked with Anthony, I would never worked with Judy, I would never worked with Leo Burnett, and I would never develop those skills that, you know, I'm only here because of the people I worked with. So, so it's important to go to places where you respect the work.
Yeah. That's a great point about you work with people that you really like. So it's obviously something that a student coming out of school would find it tough. But culture is such an important part of the mix. We talked about likability earlier. You know, don't be a douche. You know, douchebag, I think, is the way to quote it, or to quote you as best as I can. The idea of finding out about the agency's culture. What would be the best way that a student could go about finding that? What would, you know, any sort of advice, some way of tricking that in?
I'm not sure how you would find that out, other than just asking people around. One thing about our agency is it's all about people, and you don't know that because you work there. I mean, obviously good people, but then you start hearing people say about it, like especially when people leave our company, they'll come back. So yeah, Leo Burnett's all about people, and I'm not sure how you would find out from other
It is
places.
hard as a student, but I think if you can meet a couple people, do a
So the
little
informational would be a good way of doing
tour.
that.
Informational is a great way, for sure.
Yeah, because at least you can get your foot in the door, walk around, talk,
100%.
hopefully. Yeah, so that's a good idea. We have one more piece of your work that we kind of like to look at, and it's got a great insight in it, and I'd love to sort of like get your perspective or your rationale behind it. So we're going to take a quick look at the Scott Towel. So if we can actually put up all three
Bounty.
while they describe it, the Bounty, campaign. So talk us through this. I think we'll be seeing all three. They'll be sort of going back and forth.
I mean, again, it's one of those campaigns where there's a lot, like, if there's an ad produced for something, we've probably seen it or know about it, and there's a lot of great work out there for paper towels and stuff like that, and we knew at the end of the day, it's kind of funny, you talk about process, and I think both in our heads, it's like, sometimes we just talk about what do we want the ad to look like when it's done. We don't know what the ad is, but what do we want it to look like? And I think in this case, it was like, you know what, we kind of want it to be as simple as possible, as clean as possible, and just for some reason it felt right for this brand and for that project. And you know, the brief of, you know, one sheet is all you need to pick up any mess, no matter what the mess is, and trying to get people to pay a little bit extra money for that better brand and that better sheet was sort of the brief. And at the end of the day, you like literally go to stack to our creative directors with a stack like that, and what do you think about this? No. What do you think about this? No. What do you think about this? No. And it's just like, yeah, that's kind of interesting. And then you go back with three kind of interesting things and you develop them. So there's no secret behind it, but in that campaign, we sort of really focused on this idea of trying to keep it simple, clean, and visual. And we knew what we wanted it to look like. It was just a matter of trying to find what that idea was.
And that's just going through, you know, years and years and years worth of just looking at ad, just getting that gut feeling. And it all came together with, you know, amazing creative directors who is going to push us, amazing photographers, and the whole team that pulled it together.
It's funny because when we show work, and it's always I draw for some reason as the writer draws, but it's always sketch dead simple, and we never show work beyond that to internally, because if you don't like it at that stage, you know.
You're not going to like it after 30 hours of desktop.
The idea is not going to get better because the idea is it's baked in. It was literally that with, you know, this horrible drawings.
I think that's a good way to present, because you're not hiding it with fancy Photoshops or anything like that. It's just pure idea.
Right.
And that's one of the great things about Judy, is that she knows when she sees one, and like Steve would draw like on like a sketch, like a small little sketch pads, and simple, like spend less time sketching, more time thinking.
That's what I always tell students too, like they, you know, how do I get hired, or how do I, you know, it's through your book, and in your book, you need 3, maybe 4 campaigns. Again, everyone says something different, but for me, it's like 3 or 4 campaigns that are great, smart. And if you take 1 month to work on one campaign, and it's 1 month, you know, I do 3 campaigns a week, and it's like, no, just take a month. 2 weeks, just sit there with somebody, brainstorm. After that, you know, start to write, start to art direct, start to put it together. If you do 1 campaign a month, you're hired in 3 months, 4 months, versus doing 100 ads a week, and you'll never get hired because it'll never be, you know, insightful and never be thoughtful and properly brought to life. So it's just, it takes time, everything you do.
Great. We have about 5 minutes left, so we're going to go one more time over to Matt Lee and see what's going on the Twitter feed. Anything that we should be looking at?
Absolutely. Again, touching on sort of heading to portfolio reviews. Is print truly dead? I attended a portfolio review and was told to avoid including only print in my book. That was a question for you guys there.
1,000 people, 1,000 opinions.
Actually, I want to correct you on my quote there. It was 100, and you'll get 107 different opinions. At least 7 people are going to talk out of both sides of their mouth. Just want to correct you on that.
Yeah.
So,
I think the simplest thing to do is print or out of home.
Simplest and
the
simplest but the hardest.
The simplest but the hardest.
Right.
And I think for somebody saying not to do print is, I don't know about that. I think it is extremely difficult to do a powerful print or a powerful billboard, and I think it's like going to chef school. I mean, one of my chef's friend, he said he went to a chef interview, They told him to make an egg. You know, you think making an egg, come on, I can do that. But he goes, no, you got to make the perfect egg. Like, there is actually a science behind making a perfect egg, even though it looks so simple. The same thing applies to print or out of home. It's the most difficult thing, because you're not hiding from anything with bluffs or anything like that. It's just purely print.
Okay, yeah. I mean, print is I think every book should have print. Shows the craft, both sides of it, shows the idea. No, I think you should definitely have print in your book.
Perfect. So the last few questions will kind of, try and take us to the end with as many as we can.
Speed round?
No, we're not going to. Yeah, that would be the best way. Boxers or briefs.
Neither, yeah.
Wine or beer. Those would be really great to do. The idea of boxers or briefs. Neither, right?
Boxer briefs.
We won't go on that one. Neither. The idea is there anything that scares the crap out of each of you? Anything you doubt?
The next brief.
The next brief.
It's true. For me, it's you never know if you're ever going to have another great idea or a great campaign, and it's scary because you get a brief and you could be 2 weeks in on it and not have anything, and you got to show tomorrow some work, and to me that's like it's frightening because it's hard, and so for me that scares me. Is every fresh brief is like, oh shit, are we going to be able to do something great with this?
Scary. I'm not sure. I don't know if I.
Nothing scares me.
Nothing scares me.
Fearless.
other than losing passion for this, if there is such things. But yeah, I don't know.
Steve, I think, already answered this question, but I'll ask it this way: are you guys competitive with each other or competitive overall? I
think you have to be. Like even though like Steve's very quiet and stuff, like you have to be. I mean, it's funny, like Israel, he said one of his questions that he asked during interview is, what do you do for hobby? And he wants to know whether if you're into something like competitive sports or anything, because that tells a lot about a person. And yeah, the people that I work with, Steve, Judy, Lisa, like super competitive, but not in a bragging way or anything like that, but very, very competitive. I think that's passion. Right.
That is one way of measuring it. Is the competitive instinct within you. Let's go back to day one. What's the one thing you wish you knew when you started that you didn't?
They made me wear a suit on my first day, so I wish I knew that I didn't have to wear a suit. I went out and bought it that weekend. I was a student, had no money. I went out and bought a suit, showed up the first day.
Did they all laugh at you?
Oh, everyone laughed at me. Jerks. The one thing, sorry.
No, so what is that? What's the one real thing?
The one real thing.
That Steve of day one, Anthony of day one wish they knew before they got there.
I think for me, like as I was saying, like if I was a student, I wanted to see great work from students' book. I think that would have like visually showed me what the end results were. And I felt like I was in school, I was just seeing like professionals, 30, 40, I couldn't relate to it. Right. And to teach somebody, you need to show them something that, the same level, I guess. So that's one of the things that I wish.
For me, it's almost the opposite now that I was really trying to think of what that one thing is, but it's almost like now maybe we know too much about certain things, and we know where the line is, and we know what the client will buy or won't buy, or this is going to be too expensive. But when you first started out, man, I didn't think about any of that. I was just, here are my ideas, and I think sometimes I got to catch myself and say, it's not my job to make a line. It's just that's other people's jobs to say when it's too expensive or it's this or that. So to me, it's almost going back. It's almost like I want to sort of unlearn certain things, and I think as we started to grow as creatives, you start to learn the right things along the way. Like I said, I didn't know how to present when I started, and probably not a great presenter now, but I learned it along the way, and that's the only way. You can't just say, "Oh, I wish I knew that when I started," because there's no way of knowing it until you start to go. So
this could be the $1 million question to take us to the end. of our time together, which honestly, I look at the clock, the floor director is giving me, signs, and this hour's gone by too quick. I wish we had another full hour to sort of keep delving into things. But the million-dollar question is, what challenge do you have for our industry for the future? And what do you really see as our industry in the future? But what's the biggest challenge you would throw out at the business? Like say, okay, tomorrow the ad business should start doing, what's a challenge you would throw at it?
Like I'm a big fan of like the titanium, things that don't come off as advertising or doesn't look like advertising, just inventing things and for the purpose of human beings. Just something that would, change a person's life versus just ads. Like I love those ads where it doesn't feel like ad.
Right.
And that's the challenge I would do.
For me, it's kind of the same thing. I feel like, I think we need to push ourselves in connecting all the different media. The everyday is changing, and whether it's social media or traditional or whatever it is, I think we need to do a better job of connecting this all together and making it work and making better experiences for people.
Right.
And at the same time, it's I think as an industry, we do, if you look at the amount of stuff that gets entered into award shows, there's stuff that you see in magazines, I think 1 out of every 1,000 ads, whatever media it is actually interesting and good. I mean, we see a lot of in the annuals, we see the best stuff, but that's just 1 out of every 1,000. And I think, for us, it's always, every opportunity we have is always trying to make sure it's the best. Never sort of, mail it in. I think that's a challenge that we should always
stop mailing in your ideas.
Stop mailing it in. It can at least, I think it can at least always look good.
Right.
It doesn't, the copy can at least be, a little bit better than the straightest possible headline. And I think, you have to have pride in that. And, if people see an ad that you did, you should never be ashamed to say, oh, I wrote that line, or I worked on that. And I think sometimes there's stuff out there that I would, I see sometimes it happens from us too, but I think you should always try to make sure everything you put out into the world is beautiful, and at minimum beautiful, and more than that.
Beautiful. Well, this brings us to the end of our first AdTLC evening from Seneca College and the Creative Advertising Program. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with Steve Persico, the most jealous and competitive copywriter, group creative director in Toronto from Leo Burnett, and Anthony Chelcanathan, who got hired because he had the longest name on a self-promo piece. But more importantly, gentlemen, honestly, a privilege for me to sit down with you guys. I've admired your work. I admire you as people. You're two of the kindest souls, and I mean that as souls, in this business. You reach and give back to the students tenfold. Your pay forward factor is incredible. So, great love. Thank you for coming out for our first night. And I'm glad you guys could make it with us. So that's a wrap for tonight, guys. Join us next Wednesday night, also at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where we are going to have John Finkelstein, former partner and group creative director from Grip Limited Toronto, and we'll do this one more time. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Awesome crew here at Seneca College from the broadcast program. Can't thank them enough. As the credits roll, please give them their props by reading through them. Good night, and thanks for tuning in.